So welcome. I'm Dr. Ashley Toriak, and this is the Rising Above webinar. We're talking about rebuilding after a setback or in the middle of a transition. So if you don't know me, I'm Dr. Ashley Toriak. I've had a very unique life. I'm a pediatrician and have been working outside of Nashville seeing newborns right after they're born in the hospital. But I've been through a lot of changes in my career and in my life over the years. This year I'm actually transitioning, and so I'm inviting people to kind of join me as I brave another transition and kind of get through things again. And I'll be telling you a little bit about how I got through one of my worst transitions in a little bit here. But I've gotten to do a lot of different things. I worked part-time as a general practitioner, as a general pediatrician, and part-time for my church for a while, planning medical missions trips around the world. And then I also got to participate in their School of Campus Ministry and Every Nation Leadership Institute, both as a school person who participates and as the professor as well. So I've danced and sang and ventured both in the US and abroad, and have a million stories about God's direction and His help and His re-leading and re-helping and refocusing in the middle of transitions. So if you'd like to share, go ahead and write in the chat your favorite place that you've been where God has really just kind of spoken to you and showed you a whole new way to do things. I'm honored today to be able to chat with you about my life and His miraculous interventions through both the highs and sometimes the lows. So my most striking story actually starts the night before life fell apart. I was getting ready for an important interview that I was doing. I was the only medical student chosen to interview for the new dean of students. It was quite an honor. And we'd been going through their information for weeks, and in the morning we're going to be interviewing the actual people and choosing the new dean. So I was ready to go, was trying to lay out everything in my room, get my clothes and my bag and everything just set and ready to go. I wanted to look older and capable and important, right? But my main issue was I had this horrible headache, literally the worst headache of my entire life. So bad, I actually asked a friend if she thought I needed to go to the ER. But I decided I was probably being dramatic and I would just try and sleep it off. And unfortunately, I didn't wake up in the morning. And the sad truth is, I'm sure you've been in a similar position where you're ready and capable of living your dream and doing something incredible in the world. And instead, life just kind of falls apart, right? Sometimes we're positioned for greatness and instead we just end up looking at a setback. And maybe this is where you are right now. Maybe you are in a place where everything just went south. Or maybe your life looks a little different. Maybe you're just tired of thing after thing, just pure exhaustion at the work you do and the life you've been juggling. Maybe you're feeling unsettled and kind of want to move on but aren't really sure where to go or what to do next. Maybe it's frustration that you think God could have or should have done more in your life by now. Either way, I totally get it. So years ago, I had this severe illness that almost took me out of my faith, my career, and my life, honestly. It was a transition that I never saw coming that almost made me give up on everything. But thankfully, instead, I learned how to fight a different way. I had to change my vision and my mindset and my finances in order to become the doctor that I am today. So now I love teaching people how to build resilience into their careers and into their faith so that they can overcome any obstacle that comes their way. So that's what we'll be talking about today. So going back to my story, sorry, let me get a drink. So, worst headache of my life, been sleeping calmly. What ended up happening is thankfully sometime the next afternoon, after I had basically slept through the interview, I did wake up. I finally went to the ER and I said, you gotta help me, something's wrong with me. And basically I was diagnosed with bacterial meningitis, which is an infection of the brain. So I was in the hospital for the next couple of weeks. I was treated and improving, and so I was released and was planning to start working as a doctor in my internship very quickly. But the problem was I wasn't exactly back to normal. I didn't have the energy that I normally had, and also my brain wasn't kind of working at the same level. And over the next few weeks, things kind of just went from bad to even worse. So I was in the hospital for a couple of weeks, and every morning they would tell me, these are the medicines that we're giving you to take. And I couldn't remember the name of what they were giving me. I didn't mention that to anyone, though. As all hardworking overachievers, I just decided I was going to grin and bear it and see if I could get through working anyway. So I went to the ER. That was my first rotation of my internship. It's always busy. There's always a ton going on, and I was struggling a bit. But I went in to see this one patient that was a young girl who had vomiting. So I talked with her and did my exam and then said I would be back with the attending. At least that's what I assume happened. When the door closed behind me, I literally blacked out. I could not remember anything that had just happened. And when I look back at the notes I'd written, it wasn't even written in English. A lot of it looked like almost like hieroglyphics. It was just pure gibberish. So I ended up in a very uncomfortable call with my doctor, who basically got me pulled off work for almost 2 months. Over that time, I got increasingly frustrated and unsure about my plans, my desire to be a doctor, and then just depressed about the situation itself. And even more depressed when I got medical bills totaling about $80,000. I had put in years of hard work and time and energy and just ended up losing it all in the course of like a day, right? Things looked completely hopeless on every level. And I really lost focus that maybe I could still be a great doctor and take care of people and live out my God-given dream. All I could see was the struggle. And here's the deal. I've been to a lot of free webinars over the years, and this is the point where they start promising miracles, right? They really do, for the right price at least. It'd be great if I could just say everything was fine, and here's the 3 steps that I followed to fix everything, and now I'm going to sell it to you for just $9.99, right? I feel like that's what everyone always does. But I'm not going to sit here and lie to you, okay? That's not how my life went, and that's not what this webinar is for, right? It's not about creating perfect cover-ups and making everything look good on the surface. It's easy to remind us that things can look good on the surface, but it's hard to get to something that's a deep life change. And that's really what the goal is here, that sometimes life is really difficult. Sometimes things do seem like they're impossible, but God is still with us through it. And this is to remind you of that. I didn't just buy some fancy program years ago that fixed all my problems. It took months and really years of lots of encouragement, lots of stumbling, lots of support, lots of prayer to really get back to a place where I was confident and doing what I set out to do. And if you're in a place where you've been struggling to see your end goal, let's be real, it's going to take more than just a single webinar to pick yourself back up. So if you feel comfortable sharing, you can throw in the chat what it is that you're trying to overcome or transition out of. Is it like a medical illness, losing a loved one, getting fired, trying to start a new job, moving into a new relationship, whatever it is. And I just want to say, just in case, I'm sorry if anyone has been unfairly harsh about this situation, right? It's disappointing and it's frustrating to change your life entirely, and no matter how big or small your problem sounds to other people, it's reasonable to struggle. Don't forget that. During this transition time after I got sick, people kept telling me I was being a drama queen and I just needed to get over it and move on. And honestly, there are some struggles that you come up against in life that you just jump right back over. You just figure it out without a second thought, and it really doesn't do much to you. There are others that really kind of take you down in a way that you just never expected and almost kind of make you freeze or not know how to proceed. They mess with your mind and your plans and your options, and you just don't know what to do. So we're going to spend the rest of today talking about how to get back up and keep going through those, right? Getting sick was one of those hard stops for me. It messed with all of my strengths, my natural strengths, right? My brain was not at its best. My memory had always gotten me through all of my schooling, but suddenly it wasn't really trustworthy anymore. My confidence was shot. I wasn't even sure if I was going to be able to finish finish a schooling or become an actual doctor, or if this was like a sign that I needed to just walk away, right? My faith went from God can do anything to does God not like me anymore or something? I don't know. And then my financial plan, previously set and ready to handle the upcoming loans, was just over, right? I had no paycheck, I had no job, and I had no promise that I'd actually be able to restart again. I felt stuck on every level, unsure how to move forward, and unsure if I even wanted to try to anymore. So thankfully, I did not stay in the middle of the confusion and self-doubt. Everything I knew about myself had to be rethought, right? But some friends from church thankfully stepped in just at the right time and helped me start to get my vision and my foundations back together. So thankfully that gave me the footing I needed to kind of start to climb out of the pit and to keep going. So I think the best way to think about life in transitions or in struggles is in 4 steps. So 1, you want to dig through your past. 2, clarify your future vision. 3, restructure your present goals. And then 4, make sure you partner with God. So first, transitions work best when you start with digging through your past. Now, people like to pretend like our past doesn't matter, but it does really change how we walk forward. Whoever just thought this is pointless, I'm skipping this step, really, it does matter. Our past tells us about how we think about ourselves and God and even our finances and stability. If we just try and jump in and move forward without a steady foundation, we end up building all these things on something that just can't hold it. It just makes everything else harder if we don't do it right to start with. So for instance, last week, I realized I am afraid of going in my grandmother's room. It's true. That sounds weird, but just bear with me. So I was home for Christmas, and my mom sent me on an errand to go do something in my grandmother's room. Sounds so simple, but I literally went to the door and froze. So let me paint the picture for you. My grandmother's room is like pristine white. The covers are white, the chair is white, the floor, like everything is white and antique. And every single square inch of the walls and the bookshelves and like everything is covered with some small breakable little thing, right? So you can probably picture this as a child. I was not supposed to go in there, so I didn't mess anything up, right? I wasn't supposed to touch things, and I was supposed to be careful. And even though I'm not a child anymore, I still felt like I didn't belong, like it was a place I was supposed to stay out of. I walked into the room like a scared child who didn't want to mess anything up. It's how I was raised. It's how I've always been. And it takes some time and effort to move forward into a different way of thinking about your life. We can't walk through transitions like timid, scared children who don't belong there, right? That's not what God has called us to do. He wants us to walk in our lives with godly authority, but that requires that we actually get that godly authority, right? It's easier said than done. So digging through your past is not always easy, but it does really help us to figure out how to move forward. And if that's something that you want more detail on, again, this upcoming masterclass that I'm doing is going to go through it in more detail. So I'll put the link for that below. So if you're in the midst of a bad struggle, like for me with meningitis, going through my past wasn't probably the most helpful thing. It can kind of actually make you more depressed and more unsure of yourself. So the way I started digging through my past was actually not to look at my own personal story, but to look at the story that God created for humans themselves, right? So it turns out the whole story of the Bible is that we are called to work, and we're called to lives of redemption. We tend to assume that Christianity is all about salvation, but there's more to the Bible than just that. People recently started talking about deconstructing their faith, and I don't think the Bible is wrong or that there's something wrong with our faith, but sometimes the lessons that we've learned are actually quite limited about the faith that we're trying to walk. And the truth is, from the very beginning, there was work. It's literally how the Bible starts. Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, which means in the beginning, God worked, right? It's literally how the story starts. It's not just a bunch of gods sitting around doing nothing and then something bad happens and like God has to get up and fix it. That's how other cultures go, but that's not the story of life according to the Bible. God worked for just the joy of it. Work was never meant to be a punishment or a problem. It was meant to be an opportunity. It was always there. God delighted in it, and he took joy in it. He has pride in it, and he wanted to share that with us. He wanted us to work with him to further develop and further influence the world that he had started. So that means that we weren't meant to struggle here on earth, but we were meant to be blessed and to partner with him, to create, to cultivate, to expand, to explore. So how amazing would that be if that were how our Christian lives went? If we looked around, got creative, and worked with God to make things even better, and then they just all worked out and everything was great. It sounds awesome. But unfortunately, that's really just not how it goes, right? When we actually look at our lives, some things that we get in to do work out, but a lot of things are just frustrated. Like, our work is hard. We get undermined and questioned and ignored and mistreated. And far too often, life just sucks, right? It's not like the original goal God intended at all. But the Bible clearly explains why that happens as well. See, the truth is, in the Garden of Eden, man did not follow all of God's rules. Actually, it was just one rule, but they still broke it. So there was a consequence. 3 things were messed up because of this one decision, this one sin. So first, creation was frustrated. Our work was messed up. And so now it's harder to care for things. And it almost seems to fight back when we're trying to do something or change something. Second, the relationship between man and woman was messed up. You guys can go cover that in another webinar. That's not my thing. And then third, the ideal plan to walk with God was broken. So God did not walk with man anymore. And the original plan that we would work together to cultivate this world was broken. But that doesn't mean it was done. The consequence of sin said that we would have thorns and thistles and problems in our work and our lives. It'd be harder than before. But that doesn't mean the plan was thrown out. See, redemption is key to grasp here. The world was frustrated, but not destroyed. Our relationship with God was different, but not thrown out entirely. The plan was marred, but not done. There was a plan to fix it still. There was a hint of hope to come. See, God knew that sin was going to come and enter and cause problems, so he had a plan from the beginning for atonement for our sins. That's the salvation we always talk about, that Jesus comes to earth to pay for our sins. But the goal was also still relationship with us, that we would walk with God and take care of this world. So this is a glimpse of the study that I did back when I was sick, after I was sick, and something that I just love to teach, right? How the Bible teaches us the story of redemption again and again through different stories and in different ways. And I think for me, after I was sick, learning that original plan helped me some. It helped me see that, like, getting sick was not like a punishment from God, right? It was a thorn and a thistle. It's a problem that I just had to jump over. Sometimes we'll have setbacks or hurdles in the things we're called to do. But that doesn't mean that God doesn't have great things in mind for us, right? It doesn't mean we need to give up. So for me, I was sick. I got pulled off work for a couple of months, and I was pretty miserable not working, not being sure if I'd ever get to go back to work. So I had some therapy to do and was working with a counselor, and she really started questioning my job choice in general. Like, maybe this was so difficult because I just needed to leave medicine. And sometimes when life gets hard, we do need an official reset to help us move on. So I had to get really purposeful with thinking through, what was my long-term goal? Did I still actually want to be a doctor or not? So again, our first step is to look at our past, both personally and what God has intended for us as humans as a whole. And then our second step is clarifying our vision. Where on earth are we trying to go? Right? Understanding God's part to play helped me to start to rebuild my vision. I was less frustrated with life, but did I still want to be a doctor or no? Like I said, I had several people try to convince me to leave medicine, but I didn't want to leave something that I really wasn't good at yet. So have you ever written a vision statement for your life? I have some notes about writing a vision statement, and I can share that later. If you know where you're going, it's usually pretty easy to map this out. But if you need a little bit of direction or you're unsure about what you really want, this can be a little bit harder. So this will be a big part of the upcoming masterclass that we're doing. We'll have a whole hour on just how to write a vision statement. Again, it's crucial to align your vision with what God has for you and also what you want. So by then, after I'd gotten sick, I had actually already written a vision statement for my life. So when I pulled it out again and started questioning things, I realized that my medical training clearly aligned with the strengths and the vision that God had given me. So I decided to stay and move forward in my training. Where do you want to go? This is what's so crucial to hold on during a transition. Like sometimes we think that a transition means we should just change all the plans and do something different. But a vision statement kind of helps keep us focused on those things that matter most. So a lot of times struggles and setbacks along the way are easy to focus on and get lost. But if we can see God at the finish line and we can see where the finish line, at least the general idea of where it is, we can keep going even in the midst of those setbacks. That's not to say that our decisions don't change over time or new opportunities don't arise, but general vision statements help us keep focused and keep moving to where God wants us to be. So for me, after being off work a few months, I was cleared to return. I had some special help and circumstances, but I started working as a doctor and I started caring for children in the hospital. But watching them suffer didn't really make things better, right? We could fix some things, but honestly, medical speaking, there's a lot of things we just can't do, right? Some children with cancer, for instance, we can help, but others, or children with child abuse or different circumstances, sometimes it's just hard to know. We're working as hard as we can, but are we really making a difference and making things for the better for the people that we're serving? So that brought me to the third step, restructuring my present so it aimed for the future that I was going to, right? Again, the vision statement was clear, but how do I get there from here? So sometimes when life gets hard, we need to change the way we're doing things. I had to get really purposeful and address my mindset because I kept finding myself wallowing in self-pity and pity about the patients and frustration over my job, and it was just pulling down my energy and hope and making it more difficult to walk forward. So I had to get a clear vision to not quit and keep moving forward. But I was used to being a workaholic. That's kind of how I had gotten things done up till this point in my life. So I literally had to change the setup of my life so I could actually heal and move forward. Previously, I had literally lived life by whatever you ask me to do, I will do, right? Unless I was physically in another place and could not do it, any church function, any volunteer opportunity, any medical seminar, whatever it was, I was going to get there if I could. I would make it work. And I was young and healthy and it was working for a while. I was always tired, but what have you. But after I was sick, I couldn't handle both those random things and the things that God had called me to do. And the truth is, God doesn't call anyone to literally everything, right? In a transition though, sometimes we have to focus in on just those few things. Otherwise, all of the changes and distractions make it hard to continue. So I had to remake my definition of normal life, right? So I had to incorporate some really practical wellness steps so that I, again, could make it to the future that I was aiming for. So remaking my life took some time to heal, to reflect, and finish some steps. So we're going to fly over these wellness steps, and this is the general idea. The first step is to remake your priorities. What are things that are required to help you keep going, and what needs to change for a while? Again, joining all the clubs and volunteering was gone. I was normally good at working harder, but not always good at reflecting and learning from things in my past. But I was too depressed and too worn out to keep living life like that, so I had to focus in on a few select things. Again, you're just doing this for a season. You're not doing this for forever, but I had to focus in on 5 things. So what became important for me was work, sleep, medical appointments, friends, and faith. I still went to church. Those were the 5 things I did during residency, and very little else made it in, right? writing papers, volunteering, all of like my friends were doing all kinds of extra things. But I had to focus on just the one thing that I was capable of doing, finishing my training. And that gave me the time also to heal and reflect. So step 2 is to change your mindset. I had to break with some assumptions that were crushing my dreams and making it even harder to move forward. So as the workload started increasing, like I said, the patients started getting more and more complicated, and I realized I had to change the way I was thinking about medicine. See, I had initially wanted to do medicine because I thought it could fix anything. I thought it could heal everyone. But some cases started making me realize that medicine's not that good, right? There are some things that we just can't solve. So my option is to either just walk away from the imperfect medical system or choose to stay. But if I'm gonna stay, I had to realize that my environment, whether medicine or some other job, all I could control was my own mindset, the way I was looking at things. So that's what I concentrated on. I was assuming medicine was perfect. It's really not, right? It can't solve everything. But that doesn't mean it can't help at all. And that doesn't mean it's not worth it. Have you ever seen someone hold on to an idea that just ended up breaking them? Sometimes people do this with old relationships or jobs that they're just not in their skill set, ideas that just sound great but are completely ridiculous. Sometimes we hold on to things that we really shouldn't, and they just break us along the way. So trying to figure out how you're really thinking about a situation and letting those things that are just making it harder break can make it easier for you to walk forward in confidence. So these reset steps, how to heal from those past disappointments and how to really walk healthy in your life today, again, is part of the upcoming class, the Rising Above Masterclass. So then third, we want to try again. I had to get a new vision of how to be anointed by God to do excellent work. So after some time and healing, you just get in there and try again. You do your best and hope it goes better than the last time, right? And that's where things kind of started going south again, right? I was still struggling with my brain not working ideally, right? So regardless of how hard I kept trying, I kept feeling like I was still failing. Imagine the amount of confidence you need when you can't spell the word baby right. B-A-B-Y. I would try and type it and would type it wrong. So for an hour, I would be trying to type this note to get it spelled correctly, right? And then somehow I had to put myself back together and actually go see the patient, even though I knew I couldn't spell the word baby right? It just wasn't going the way that I wanted it to go. No amount of trying harder was changing the fact that my brain just wasn't at normal par and wasn't getting better quick enough. I was giving 110%. I'd get to work early. I'd do all these extra things, but I still wasn't totally adequate. And I couldn't simply work harder and fix things. If I spent more hours working and less hours sleeping, my brain would get even worse and I'd make more and more and more mistakes. It was a mess. So I felt like I just came to the end of myself. And thankfully, it's not a bad place for a Christian to be. So thankfully, I found that I had another strategy to help these patients and to help myself. And that's God. So how do we handle transitions? How do we get the energy to keep going when it's hard or when we don't feel like we're doing well enough? We make sure that we partner with God. What do we do when we run out of just try harder energy? What do we do when the thorns and thistles and setbacks just don't seem worth going through? We go back to the story of redemption and remember who our God is. So what we see in the Bible is the story of working and partnering with God started from the very beginning. And he never got rid of it. That's the same story all of the Bible stories are telling. And every time God gives this plan, and somebody tries to walk it out, but they don't quite get it right. But that's okay, because God knows that they're not going to get it right, and he has this plan to redeem it, to fix it, to get it back to the original plan. He steps in to help what we can't do, and so that we're working with him to truly change the world. We see this happen again and again. It happens with Adam, it happens with Abraham, it happens with the Israelites being called out of slavery. Then with Jesus and the church in the New Testament, the whole Bible is a story of redemption. So I love the story of the promised land, of the Israelites walking into the promised land especially, because it's such a great example of how to walk through transitions, right? So years before, Abraham has been chosen by God, and he has a very specific instruction that he needs to follow. That instruction is believe, right? Believe that he's going to go where God tells him to go. Believe that God is going to provide him with a son, and believe that one day that son is going to become a bunch of people that are going to get to live in this promised land God has set for them. All he has to do is believe. It's great. And you would think that we go forward a few chapters in the Bible and we see the Israelites living in this promised land of Israel, but that's not how it goes, right? We actually see the exact opposite. And it's so hard, I'm sure, for them to grasp because they see the vision. They know what the goal is, but they're looking at something quite different in their actual lives. The Israelites actually end up living as slaves in the land of Egypt for 400 years. Not just a year or two, decades and decades. But they have this promise in the back of their minds, in the back of their hearts, that God is going to help them and free them and still give them the promised land that they're going to rule over and take care of. Which is a great idea in theory. It sounds like a, fairy tale or something. But when you really think about this practically, it's kind of insane, right? Like slaves don't know how to create a new kingdom and rule a country. And so the redemption of Israel was multifocal. It literally changed their entire lives. Because the truth is, the Israelites are not just dealing with thorns and thistles. They're enslaved in captivity and being mistreated. They don't just need to deal with their pain. They literally need help on every level of life to get to the vision that God has given them. So they need social freedom, right? They need their oppressor taken down. They need to be taken out of slavery and the ability to walk free as free people. They need economic freedom. They don't have some 401k or savings account hidden under their bed somewhere. They're literally going to need money to build a new country. They need political freedom, right? Their leaders, they need to change the way they think about leadership. They've been mistreated and crazed for years. They're going to need some clear guidelines on how to create a new society that's fair. They're going to need a new definition of normal. Slaves know desperation. They know surviving, barely surviving. They don't know the definition of right and wrong. They don't know like normal work hours, right? They've got this warped idea of what life should look like. Then they need mental freedom. They've been viewed as hated and worthless. They've been killed for years. They need new self-confidence and new self-worth to be able to lead and live as kings and queens. They need healing, emotionally, physically, mentally, rest from their past. And last, they need religious freedom. They don't need the Egyptian polytheism where everything's a god and you just are constantly serving everyone. They need to remember the one true God. They need to be reminded of the real God because by now, they're probably thinking of him different than he actually is. They probably see him as some silent, angry old grandfather sitting in his rocking chair up in heaven, ignoring them, right? Like he promised big, but delivered nothing. And have you ever felt like this about God, right? Like he's great, he's powerful, but he's sitting up there letting my life go to chaos, even though I've been faithful. I've definitely been there. And I know the Israelites were too, right? And they need a reintroduction to the real God. They need to know the God who cares, who intervenes, who speaks, who is stronger and more powerful and more caring than any situation and any problem, any obstacle they will ever come up against. They need their view of God completely rewritten. They need the view of the God who walks with us, plans with us, dreams with us, and helps us go forward into greatness. The Israelites are a legit mess on every level of life, right? They don't know how to do anything right. They know how to live as slaves and survive, but they don't know how to really thrive. And as great as it would be if God just handed them their freedom, you can't put slaves in charge of a kingdom. He can't just say, go build a land and do it well. They literally don't know how. And I don't know about you guys, but I relate to this a lot, right? Like they barely know how to survive, not thrive. And that's just what I feel like far too often, right? Like watching the news sometimes, I'm like, this world is losing its mind and we can never fix anything, right? I go to work and I don't know how to fix things in my workplace. I don't know how to fix financial blunders sometimes. I don't know how to make the arguing and bickering between different groups and people groups and different ways of doing things and living stop, right? I don't know how to overhaul things that have been failing for decades. And even if I get that God loves redemption and I see this vision and I have this hope for the future, getting there from where I am now, sometimes it just seems impossible. And that's because it's something that we can only do by walking step by step out of the darkness, through the desert, through the insecurity, with God by our side, and into the life that He promised, just like He does with the Israelites. And what this story shows us is it's not just about one thing. God doesn't fix or care about just one thing on their lives, right? He doesn't hand them a wad of cash and say, here, go fix this yourself, right? Like, buy your freedom, build a business, I don't know, do something, figure it out. But that's not going to change their mindset or all of the other political problems, right? So He doesn't just do that. He doesn't leave them in their confusion and their insecurities and their mistrust. Guys, He doesn't even show up announcing that He has forgiven their sins and their relationship with Him. As crucial as that is to our relationship with God in our Christian lives, they need more than forgiveness. They need literal help in their lives. They know what it's like to be surrounded by pain and death and fear and idolatry and poor leadership, and they need someone to step into that mess and change the very fabric of their lives. And that's what God does, right? They need a total plan of shalom and completeness and wholeness and peace and shalom that God walks out with them. And the truth is, we know exactly what this is like. I'm sure by now you know what it's like to need the God of the Bible to show up and change the impossible into a place of possibility. I'm sure you know what it's like to be frustrated and upset and feel like you're not making a difference, and you just need an open door, a new opportunity, a new chance. And that's the kind of thing that only God can do. See, God has this picture of total redemption of their entire world, and it reminds us that He cares about our entire world like that, from spiritual to economic to mental health to hope to career. Every single aspect of it He changes for the Israelites, which means God can change it for us as well. It means that our biggest hopes and dreams, our biggest problems, our biggest prayers and aspirations, and our deepest fears can all be touched and changed. He doesn't step in and say, no, that's too big a problem, or I don't feel like helping you with that, right? He says, I'm not overwhelmed. I've got a plan. And I want you to walk it out with me. So this means the same for our lives now, right? Like God cares about the things in our lives that are not at perfection. He sees those parts and wants to step into them and wants to change them. It doesn't mean that it means that God doesn't want us succeeding in one area of life and failing miserably in another, right? He wants us to walk out a picture of redemption on every level, be it economic, be it political, be it personal. He cares about all of those things. He knows how much those things can distract us from His best for us. And His best is usually better than we expect. So this is exactly what God ended up doing for me. After I was sick, it wasn't always easy, but we dug through my past. He reminded me to rewrite my future and to rewrite the way that I think of Him and His ability in my life. And regardless of how bad or hopeless or impossible it may seem, He redeems that which seems lost into something incredible. So I needed a new vision, and God gave it to me, right? We walked through the past, we walked into a new vision, we've restructured the present to do things differently and actually get to the vision. And that's how I walked out of brain injury and into living my life as a doctor and a confident woman of God. God partnered with me to take me there. And you may say, Well, what does that actually look like? Like, how do we understand that? What does it look like to partner with God? And I know you've seen this before, and I'm going to guess you've seen it before in worship, right? If God cares about our world and wants to develop it, then basically our work is like worship. And I love the example of thinking about this like a worship service, like a church service, right? I've been helping lead church worship since I was a little girl. And there's 3 levels of compliments you can get. Well, that's not true. There's a level where it's so bad nobody can concentrate, or really, we don't really compliment that usually. I'm sure you've seen that before too. But there are 3 compliments, like, oh, it was on the good side. So one is, you did so good tonight, right? Everything was nice and good and in tune. And this is usually what I get. I'm not a professional musician, right? I'm hanging in there. But there's this other level where talented musicians go off on these crazy vocal runs and amazing ad libs, and you get another level of commitment and creativity and talent there. It's so amazing. And what you bring is excellence, right? It's great and inspires others to want to be like that and surprise and talented and stuff. But there's this 3rd level of worship where the end response that you get is God was here, right? It takes you from your own ability to your own level of excellence to God's presence, right? It's incredible, not just because it's good music, but because you get to see God partner with it and really change things. He'll change the entire room. He'll change the atmosphere into something else entirely. And that's where people get healed and changed and freed from their past. God adds this extra level of greatness that we weren't even planning on. And most Christians understand that that's the goal, like doing a great worship service or doing some incredible conference or something like that. But we don't always realize that that same level of anointing should come to our careers as well, our day-to-day lives. See, often we don't expect God to show up and help us with our patients, help us with our taxes, help us with our difficult bosses and our struggles and goals. We don't expect God's blessings and favor and presence and wisdom to take a good situation into something even greater, right? How do we get to a place where we're worshiping with the work that we do every day? What if the same anointing that God has given your favorite worship leader would come on you to help you walk out that dream, that vision that God has given you, and influence the very place He's called you to work every single day? So, you have 2 options in your transition after the disappointment in your life right now. So first, you just keep on keeping on, right? You settle for less than you're capable of doing. You pretend to be a regular person and maybe just, ignore the fact that you had some dreams and some goals over there. They really don't matter that much, right? Like, you give up and settle for the person who just, sits at home scrolling on their phone, and pretend to not dream of all that God has given you to dream of. Option 2 is you rise above the past and into a new future that actually works. You partner with the Creator, who has the ability and the power and the ways to make everything that seems impossible change into reality. You get renewed and energized, and the hope and the mindset to really remind yourself that this matters to God, and you partner with someone who changes nothingness into life and abundance. In the Rising Again Masterclass, we're going to talk about how to do just that. The truth is, transitions don't just fix themselves. They need some energy applied to be able to walk out well. So this class is going to, again, allow you to let go of any frustrations or disappointments or self-doubt that's been taking up too much of your energy, right? It's going to give you the practical steps in the spiritual direction to help you walk this out, not alone, but with God's help. And then lastly, we'll even map out a plan where the money to get this done comes from, because that isn't theoretical, but also God-given. So let's get you to your best year ever. So what is the Rising Again Masterclass? Well, we're going to go through these same steps with more detail, more scripture, more encouragement, and more practical steps to walk them out, right? 12 weeks to reset everything. So again, we're going to dig through our past, clarify our future visions, restructure our present goals, and partner with God. And we'll be doing 12 weeks, general lessons, just like this, but also with time to chat and interact and ask questions and discuss your life as well, right? So we're going to dig through all of this. This also includes, we're going to walk out an hour-long building your vision statement. You'll get some personalized direction. We'll do it literally in that moment, and you'll get some reflection and time to run some ideas off of me. This also includes 50 short videos that I've done. They're little 5-minute lessons that you can easily listen to on your commute, help encourage you to help stay focused on God and not on the struggle. And then last, I really couldn't figure out how to fit this in this hour, but we'll talk more about how to fit in your finances, right? Again, getting sick and having $80,000 worth of medical bills and getting pulled off work and then getting my medical loans in the mail, it was a mess of crazy. And even if I could see that God wanted me to go this way and stay in medicine, how on earth I was supposed to do that financially? Sometimes our finances really do take us in a completely different way, because how are we going to pay off hundreds of thousands of dollars of bills without a job, right? But the same God who stepped in and gave me my job back and built up my confidence, gave me a vision, also helped me fix my finances. See, I thought I had no medical insurance for those 6 months, and then when I got sick, I got the entire medical bill. But it turns out our medical training included something called catastrophic insurance, which I'd never noticed anywhere in my paperwork. But the truth is, God starts taking care of things that we're not paying attention to when we start walking with Him, right? When we start walking and trusting that God is going to get us where we need to be, He starts taking care of those little things we weren't even thinking of, including the finances for how to get there. The Israelite story shows us that God is our provider, and He treats our finances like an inheritance we can claim. And so we'll cover how to walk that out as well. Not prosperity gospel nonsense, but how to truly partner with God in our finances so that we can financially get your big dreams done. And honestly, guys, years ago, it really just felt like I was just having regular work days, right? I went to the hospital, I finished my training, I figured out how to make it financially, right? But 3 years later, I graduated from residency and saw the miracle it was for this timid, questioning girl with a brain injury to complete her training with no patients lost, no lawsuits filed, and no wrongful treatments done. And I realized how crucial and how perfectly God had protected not only me, but also the work I was doing in my patients. God partnered with me to do something that I really shouldn't have been able to do. And that's what I want to share with you, how to walk with God into something incredible. We don't just need more wisdom or more hard work or more strategies. We need more of God. So join me for this masterclass. We'll put in the biblical knowledge, practical knowledge, and God anointing together, right? So we can seriously get you to the next level, not just for this time, but for any time that you need direction. I can show you how to let go of the burdens and focus on something new. It isn't too big for God. He's not afraid or turned off by or intimidated by that idea that's kind of brewing in the back of your head. He wants to help you walk it out. So let's partner together and walk into a new life. So sign up below in the link, and I hope to see you there. Have a good one.